harp player and a blues man, otherwise known as Joseph Harp among other things too. We're basically going to just hang out a little tonight and jam some acoustic blues for you. I thought it would be kind of fun to get Joe on. We jam quite frequently at some of the local jams, both one I host on a Tuesday night locally, and he does one on a Sunday, so we kind of tend to go back and forth to each other's jams, and we've got to know each other, got friendly hanging out, and have some fun playing some blues. Let's ask you a few questions about yourself, Ian, so we can get to know a little bit about your background. First off, how long have you been playing harp?
Well, 5 years, actually, serious harp.
Okay.
I got harps before that, but I can remember. It's kind of hard to remember because I remember playing it, but I don't remember actually starting to play it seriously. I could have playing along with the radio like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I started, I remember in college when I was going to college. That was actually six
Right.
years ago.
Now you're a graduate of Northeast Broadcasting.
Yes,
Right.
I am.
Now, is that what you're talking about when you say college, or did you do other schools too?
No,
Cool.
just that. Yeah.
Cool. Now, how long a program is that?
8-month radio and television intensive program.
Yeah, did you like it?
I liked it very much, actually.
Good. Now, you also play some trombone, I heard. In fact, a mutual friend, Jimmy Texero, who I work with, and I am good friends with, I happen to mention when you guys were back in school, you played in like a swing jazz band and went to Mexico, and you guys used to be like a touring high school jazz band. Is that correct information?
Went to Mexico twice. It was a pretty darn good band. Legendary.
Yeah.
Because it was pretty well known. And the thing about that band, which is really cool, is that the high school stage band would play like 3 songs. They'd be on and off in like 15 minutes. That band would put on a 4-hour show and give you a show.
Yeah.
And that was Mr. Smith, John Smith, runs the
I know John.
elementary school program. That was his program, his baby.
He's been known for really doing a lot with the kids in the music field and stuff.
And he did a lot for me, as a matter of fact, to tell you the truth, because I mean, that experience alone is worth its weight in gold.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, how about who the people you listen to? Who's some of your favorite artists?
You know, that's weird, because everyone says you must listen to a lot of harmonica, but you know I don't. People that I own a lot of, my first love was like the Stray Cats. Well, it wasn't like them, it was the Stray Cats. And I own all of the Stray Cats. Melissa Etheridge, which has been taken from me because, you know, I liked her and everyone said, who is she? And I'd have to hep them to it. And, you know, now everyone knows Melissa Etheridge. And Paul Simon is very musically
all heavies.
talented.
Talking about all heavies. All heavies. All right, great. Well, we're going to start out with a little jam. This one's based kind of out of the key of A. And I got the riff idea off of Stevie Ray Vaughan's Life Without a Drop. Life, is that it? Life Without a Drop?
Living life by the drop.
Living life by the drop. That's
Stevie done a little bit of that himself.
Did a little bit of that, exactly. So anyways, that sounds good to me. Okay. When you phrase, you really have a tendency to work the chords. I've come out of a lot of different bags of playing myself, where blues you definitely got to work the changes. That's what it's all about. Sometimes less is more. Sometimes a real flashy lick can work real well. And just countless players that I've watched, both on guitar, saxophone, harmonica, keyboards, that do this well. But I've done other styles of music too. Well, like the opening for the show. That's a tune of mine called FUGM, and that's like you're into the more tech stuff. What's your attitude or science, if you have any, to the way you're phrasing this? Because you're real nice on the changes. You come right in nice and tight. And what did you do to develop that? Was it just a natural thing, or did you come across some little techniques that you work towards to make it work better for you?
Well, actually, most of it comes from playing the trombone, which is a bass instrument.
Mm-hmm.
So I always, playing the bass instruments, was playing the bass parts, which is pretty much the root of, especially the blues.
Walking through the changes and chords for sure. Yeah.
Exactly. So from those, the trombone training that I went through playing the trombone for so many years. When I finally picked up the harmonica, I mean, that was the only natural thing for me to do, really, was pick up on that. Of course, I listened to some harmonica players, too, like Delbert McClinton. When I listen to him, you know, he's got a really he's really well respected, and he doesn't really do that much.
Right.
And sometimes, like you said, less is more.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't have to be flashy. No. There are times when you can just go absolutely crazy.
Sure,
Blues Traveler as a harmonica player that can go back and forth.
It's fun to do that, exactly. If you develop the ability to throw the frosting on the cake, as the saying goes, it's nice if you can do it as long as it's not overdone. Question for you: have you ever checked out a guy named Mark Ford, Robin Ford's brother?
I haven't heard much. See, Robin Ford, I've heard at other people's houses. You go to a party, he's like, oh, what's that?
Well, his brother, I actually saw them at Great Woods, and not to get too far off the track, but while we're talking about this, we got to get together next time we hang out. I'll make you coffee. You got to check this guy out.
Oh, that sounds good.
Be right in your bag. You definitely would like what this cat's doing.
I'm always into music exchanges. If someone wants to give me music, I'll take it.
Cool. I want to do another jam. I just need a second. I'm going to change up guitars here. Real nice stuff. That which raises a question. Do you like doing the slow, sleazy ones like we just did, or do you prefer an uptune, or is it just 6 of one, half a dozen of another, as long as it's good?
Yeah, I would say, you know, as long as it's... I'm more of a rhythm and blues fan. I mean,
Yeah.
what I would be listening to would be more rhythm and blues. However, the sad blues is, you know, that dirty midget strippers on the bar. You know, that's
this blues
fun
that we
to
just
play.
did. This blues that we just did, to me though, is like it could come out of a sad blues, but they're kind of being a clown about it and joking about it. It's almost like, you know, it's sad blues with a sense of humor.
Definitely,
type,
definitely.
I guess someone where this stuff comes from. I guess you have to learn to have a sense of humor, you know.
Oh yeah, you were sitting in the penitentiary. You got to come up with something.
Exactly.
But like, you know, it's as far as playing. I mean, obviously, I love playing that because there's so much you can do. Like you just hang on one note, or you can go all over the place. You have room to think about it.
That's fun. This is really good for me because a lot of the units that I end up in, and by choice a lot of times too, I'm not saying that I dislike this, what I'm about to say, but I'm usually the feature soloist. And although I'll comp behind the vocals and stuff, a gig like this where I can just sit down with an acoustic guitar and just orchestrate behind another soloist, like this is a blast. I love doing this just as much as I like taking the front myself, so this stuff's a lot of fun. Let's keep this in the same key and let's do something similar to this, but let's pick it up a little bit and give it like a little bit of a boogie beat.
Give it a little something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like this here.
Yeah. This is Robert Johnson.
That's some neat stuff. That stuff's got a lot of freedom.
Yeah, it's
and flow to it, you know.
moves.
And yeah, sometimes it's not
It
always.
slides. I guess that's why they call it a slide, huh?
It's not doesn't always seem correct, but you can make it work. And the beauty part that I like about this is you can really like take the progression out, change it around, and there's always that point where you can come back. So it gets a little avant-garde and atonal at times there, but it works at the same time. You know?
Blues ain't always simple.
Yeah. Well, you know, Robin Ford said something once that made a lot of sense about technique and stuff. He said sometimes you use bad technique to do a good thing. And that's really true, and especially in this music. And jazz, too. Jazz has there's a lot of restrictions to that, but I mean, there's a lot of boundaries that they stretch to the limit, too. I love that stuff, too. Joe, we're just about ready to wrap it up. I had a blast tonight, man. Will you come back on again sometime?
Always a pleasure. Always
a pleasure, man. I had a really good time jamming tonight. This was great. I hope you folks out there enjoyed it. And keep a lookout. We're jamming around town and stuff, and we like to see people come on down and to the different jam sessions. Unfortunately, this is I can't do advertisements on this show, but just keep a name out for the Carrera Jam. My name's Jimmy Carrera. We had Joseph Hotboy
look for
Martin.
my name too.
He's out and about. Joe's out there jamming. You can catch him, and we like to jam and play. Joe's always looking for something to sit in, and we welcome him down to our jam sessions and have a good time. What do you say we take it out with a little bit more on this one? I didn't quite get enough of that.
Oh, that's right.
All right. Once again, you're watching the Guitar Clinic. I'm Jimmy Carrera. Thanks again, and we'll see you real soon.
Thanks.
Welcome to the Guitar Clinic. My name's Jimmy Carrera, and today I've got a guest with me. This is Rob Barry over here. Thanks for joining us, Rob. I'm glad you could be here. Rob and I go back a long way. I was actually his teacher, believe it or not, back when he was about 10 years old. He studied with me for a few years, and then he went out to Berkeley, and since we've been in a couple of bands together, we've done some recording together, a lot of jamming and good times over the years, and he recently has been on the road for probably about the past, year and a half?
About a year.
About a year. And he's done some travel and playing with some different bands and different styles of music, and he's back in the area now, so I thought it'd be great to get him up on the show and talk about music and maybe play a little bit too. And well, I know some of the things you did. I know you taught back here. You're going to be teaching again locally now that you're back here and sticking around for a while, getting back into a band and stuff, I'm assuming.
Yep.
I know we'll be doing some jamming.
Definitely. You know
it. Okay, good. Okay, look.
Good to be back.
Yeah, good. Good to have you back. Was just a swing blues. You know, it's got some jazz influences in there, some blues influences, in the key of D, and it's got quite a few changes. Basically, I'm using a lot of 13th voicings in there. D13 be your first chord, to a G9, back to the D13 again, back to the G9, and it's going to move down to a C9. D9, down to a B13, E9, A13, D, and A7 sharp 9. Sometimes I'll use the D13th in there, other times I might use the 9th progression, depending on what kind of voicing or how I'm trying to color the tune. How about you? You were doing some really neat walking stuff in there. What's some of the things you were doing on that, Rob?
I was doing a lot of triadic things, just outlining the chords like on D to the G, and a lot of chromatic leading things like from D, just outlining the triad to G, leading up to D. A lot of things like that, and instead of always doing triads like this, I might do an octave up like that, and basically just trying to outline the chords all the time and hitting the root notes on the 1 of the measure, and lot of chromatic lead-ins.
Yeah, you did a real good job of spelling out the changes. It made it easy to solo over. Comp is in there
Cool.
and fills up the spaces sometimes, but a good comp usually just pops in a few things here and there, and you really rely, I do anyways, really rely on what the bass player's doing. It's kind of his job to like lead into those changes. So
Yeah.
that's something that's important. Okay, great. And some of the other things I did as far as in the soloing thing for analyzing how I did the solo work, I played out of D pentatonic quite a bit. That's a real sweet, warm sounding pattern over those changes, and you can't just run a scale. I'm playing out of those scales and moving them around in their inversions around the neck and try to create catchy little melodies and phrases and bits and pieces of phrases to put together maybe a storyline if you can keep it going. A few flurries of things. When it goes to the bridge, which basically is like a 2/5 in E minor, substitutions I used there was an E minor 9, and I used kind of like an A6 there with an E in the bass. So it gives me that major 6 sound. You could actually go to a 13th there, but this gave it a little darker tone, and I kind of like the way it fit in with the bass line better.
Yeah.
And then it modulates up to the F sharp, to the B6.
It's like that change in Satin Doll.
Yeah, exactly, because it's all based around 2/5 ideas, but a straight 2/5.
Yeah.
You know, this adds just a little bit of mystique to it, type of thing. And when I played over those changes, I basically played out of E minor sounds or the Dorian mode, which we've talked about in a previous clinic. And then when it went up to the F sharp, I just basically moved that pattern up that I was working out of a whole step, and I played out of F sharp Dorian. So those were the 3 things that I used for the most part through the solo. It seemed to fit the changes well, and there are a lot of chord changes in this song, and they move right along. So that kind of fit pretty well. You could actually get away with that D pentatonic through those bridge changes too. But you have to select your notes more carefully, especially when it goes to the 2/5 and E minor is okay. When it went to the F sharp, I still went to that F sharp Dorian because it really fits it well, and it ends up resolving. So when I come back to the D pentatonic, you hear the change, but yet it's still matching the change as well. So those are some of the things I did. Was there anything else you'd like to add to the progression and things you may have done? Like you changed up your walk a little bit when we went to that 2/5. That was kind of neat, what you were doing there. What were you doing in there?
Well, basically on the bridge, I was just trying to simplify it a little bit. Instead of playing as many notes, I was more of a melodic, in the pocket, just pretty type of thing. Sometimes I won't always play the chord tone or the root on one. I might do a different chord tone,
Okay.
just like as it's getting into it, as the song proceeds, playing maybe the 3rd or the 5th on the 1 instead of the root. And
Okay.
and also sometimes I put some chord substitutions in preceding a chord by the 5th. Whereas if I have a measure where I'm going to play C, like outline a C 9th chord or C 7th chord, right before, I might precede that with a G configuration because that's the 5th up. It's a common jazz substitution. Whereas if I was going to do, an example would be like, here's the C, maybe to set up the C, going G to C. Maybe I'll put it more in context. When the song first starts off, it's D to G. Then you go 2 measures of D to the G, where the G starts. So at the end of that second measure of the D, that's where I might precede the G with the 5th of that.
Okay, makes sense.
You
Yeah,
know?
works good, and it also gives you you're changing up what you're doing. So even though you're spelling out your changes and leading into the changes, you're maintaining consistent walk, keeping
Right.
it interesting by changing things
Right.
up.
The whole thing is to keep that feel, quarter note feel.
jammed around with a little bit was this thing off of a GB2 session trainer that we had, and had this neat little progression called Be Real, which basically sounded to me like it was an Earth, Wind, and Fire jam. Kind of funky, real cool bass line in there. And Rob basically handled all the changes on this one. I had little synthesized keyboard popping chords here and there in the background, but Rob carried all the changes on this one. And I basically played over this one just off the top of my head and played by ear. I don't have all the changes in this one memorized, which isn't always, I don't always make a habit of doing that, but we're kind of having some fun here, so we thought we'd throw this one in. Basically, all I use in this, it's a real simple format, the tune is, and it's a repetitive type of thing, but at the same time has a few little neat turnarounds and changes in there. But I basically played out of G blues all over the neck and just tried to come up with as many different ideas and different phrases and things that I could come up with, and different picking techniques, and basically doing these little, some cliche things, some things a little out of the ordinary, and just basically going for coloration and tone as well as throwing a few licks in here and there. But everything that I did all over the neck was based out of just inversions of a G blues scale. Once again, when I was approaching certain changes, my ear told me, well, I can't hang on this note, I can't bend on that. For me, that's always been a trial and everything, whether I've analyzed a situation or not, because a lot of times things look one way on paper, but your ear will tell you to do something different. Right. So on this one, it was strictly by ear. Most of the time when I'm soloing, it's by ear. Jazz changes, like on the other tune, on the swing tune, it's nice to know where you're going because there's a lot of things to deal with. But this was basically what's called a modal solo. You pretty much can stay in one key, one type of pattern, and just use your inversions and play your different runs and things on the neck and get away with it. So basically for me, that's all I did. I was basically just noodling around on this thing. And I stayed pretty much in G blues the whole time.
Even over the bridge in C?
Yep.
Playing the groove in C?
Yep, pretty much. Because if I treat it like it's in G, to me, I was looking at the C like we were moving up to the 4 chord. Mm-hmm. So I was still able to do that. When you go to a 4 chord, though, you have to phrase differently, even though you're within the same scale. So these are things you learn to pick out the notes in a pattern that work good over the 4 chord and resolve it coming back to the 1 and whatnot like that. You could probably actually shed a little bit more light on where this thing actually went for changes. Why don't you give us like a little brief description of what you went through on it and what you've been using. You did some really neat things on this, and real nice tight groove on this.
Thanks. It was, I basically just stuck to roots and octaves. The progression, it's D sharp, I believe D sharp minor 7. Is that what you're playing under that? Mm-hmm. To a D7 with a flat 5. I just play the root, the D, to G minor 7. So, and the rhythm is just exactly what the bass drum is playing on the machine.
On the kit.
You know, trying to, or the drum set in general, just trying to lock in with the groove of the drum set. And on the bridge there, the same thing. I'm just trying to lock in on the groove and outline the changes pretty much an octave. It goes to C minor 7, then C minor 7 with a flat 5. I do the same thing. Then it's D minor 7, D sharp minor 7, back to C, and then the D. And that's pretty much what I was playing every time, really outlining the changes. Sometimes I would do some little embellishments, primarily on the G minor 7 thing, like, or little licks like that, or little things like that, just sticking them in. Just trying to play real simple and outlining the changes and back up the soloist.
Okay, good. That pretty much, it's a good way you laid that out nice. So basically, we were looking at what, maybe 2-3 chords at the most.
Yeah.
In the whole tune, as far as the progression goes. And once again, you started out on D.
Yeah, D sharp.
D sharp.
To D.
To D.
To G.
To G. And then it went up to like basically your C.
Yep, just on the going up to the 4, grooving on that.
Yep.
Then to the 5, the D, but it's minor 7. To the sharp 5, minor 7 again. And that's all the chords.
Good. Well, that pretty much sums that one up. Okay. Well, that about sums up what we're doing here tonight. I'd like to thank Rob once again for coming down, buddy. It's always
Thanks
good
a
to
lot,
see
Jim.
you. And once again, you're going to be teaching local, and you plan
Yep.
on hanging around for a while, so that
Yep.
means we'll get to do some jamming soon. And anybody out there looking for some bass lessons, this is the guy to talk to. Once again, this is the Guitar Clinic. My name is Jimmy Carrera. Today my special guest was Rob Berry. We want to thank you for joining in, and we hope to see you real soon. We want to keep things going, and hopefully we'll keep you on the edge of your seat and keep changing things up, and we're trying to make this as much fun as possible. So until then, keep on picking, and we'll see you real soon. Hi, and welcome to the Guitar Clinic. My name is Jimmy Carrera. We're going to do something a little bit different tonight. I brought the band in. We're called Carrera, and this past summer we did a thing at Summerfest with Beatlemania, and I thought it might be fun if we showed you some clips from that show and got you to meet the band and talk about the day that we had down there. It was a lot of fun. I remember it was really hot. To my far left over here we got Mark. He's our bass player. Beside me is Donnie. She's our keyboard player. And over here we got Chad. He's our drummer. And this is Louise next to me. She's our singer, and she also happens to be my wife.
Hey, I have to tell them that.
The tune that the show opened up with was a tune by James Cotton, and it was called Ain't Doing Too Bad. And that's how we opened our set. Once again, it was like about 100 degrees out there at this point in time. I think, would we go on somewhere around 5 or 6 in the afternoon or something like that? And we did a two hour set. So you have any recollections of?
What time did we go on? 5?
I think we went on at 5.
We ended up, we were
Yeah,
setting up at
5,
something
yeah.
like 5 o'clock, and actually I think we shot the set off at like 6,
Yeah.
and we went until 8.
Yeah.
I think is how it went. So basically, I just remember it was hot. I thought we had a pretty good day playing-wise. It was a lot of fun as far as that went.
A lot of
And,
people.
and things like that. And one of the things I remember most was having problems with the monitors, hearing our vocals.
Yeah.
Was my biggest
Yeah.
problem that I had to deal with all day. And
Yeah, me too. I remember at one time we were playing a song. I kept hearing this crackling sound. I thought it was coming out of my amp. It was coming out of the monitor coming from your amp.
And I was getting it. Yeah, I was getting it. I was getting it too. Yeah. What about you? Back where you were, what did it sound like behind the drums?
You couldn't hear much.
No, it was pretty tough on stage. Vocals especially, instruments, we had our own amps and things up there for our stage monitor, but vocals were real tough.
Vocals were terrible to hear.
But anyways, we tried to make the best of it. We had, and actually the other thing was that I was disappointed in me, we didn't quite have the crowd we had the year before.
No.
For our set anyways. But the people that were there seemed like they were into it and having a good time. And things like that. Okay, well, let's moving on. We're going to go to another clip of the band. I'm not quite sure what this one is, so let's just take a look at the monitor and see what we've got here. Yep, that one was Stevie Ray Vaughan, tune called Pride and Joy. He's one of my favorites. I love doing his stuff. I could play his stuff all night long. And I think basically a lot of my influences coming up as a player and a young kid, we're about in the same generation and very close in age, so I listened to a lot of the same stuff that he did. So both vocally and guitar-wise, I think his stuff is pretty comfortable for me. And the B3 fits in great in his stuff, you know, which is basically, that's your main axe. You prefer that over piano, don't you?
Yeah, I like that over piano. Actually, the band that I really liked when I was starting out was the Allman Brothers. They had that sound, plus the old R&B cats, the Young Rascals, all those guys. They started bringing the B3 out.
Yeah.
We started tweaking around on those little old Vox Continentals and Papiza organs. And when they came out with the B3, we all wanted them, but they're so heavy to cart around.
Were they big cake back then like they are now?
Yeah, you could get a brand new B3 for about $3,600.
So back then, that was a lot of money.
That was a lot of money.
Still a lot of money today,
Yeah. But now they're selling for more than that. If you can find a pristine one, they're like double price what they were back then.
Right.
So they've gone up, but they've got that real fat sound.
Yep.
And it blends. It blends real well with blues. Fills in a lot of gaps.
Yeah,
lets the guitar
good
player
in rock music or the crossover. Mark, your background is, we're all, well, with the exception of Chad, he's the youngin in the band, Junior over here.
Junior.
But with the exception, most of us are all within a couple of years of each other. You grew up in the same generation, listening to the same stuff, and you played with some heavies actually in the early days, or they went on to be heavies. You were with Steve Smith for a while.
Yeah.
Was with Journey, and what's the name of his band he's got now?
Vital Information.
Yeah, and you played bass for him. Didn't you guys open for Johnny Winter or something?
That was a long time ago at the Stairway.
Where was it?
At the Stairway.
At the
Club.
Stairway? I don't even know where that was.
Brockton.
How old were you guys when you did that?
We were in high school.
Oh, so you were teenagers.
Yeah.
So that was a while ago, buddy.
Yeah, that was a real long time ago.
Now, Chad, how long you finished Berkeley? How long ago?
1990.
Yeah. And what about your influence? I know you like the fusion stuff, which I'm a big fan of.
Well,
that stuff.
most of the drummers that I, listened to a lot of were guys like, Steve Smith, Vinnie Colaiuta,
Yeah.
Dave Weckl.
Yeah. We sat down to watch endless footage of those guys
Yeah,
together.
that end of things. But there's the other guys that contributed a lot more, earlier, Buddy Rich.
Right. But yeah, the
guys
pioneers.
Like and I was never too much into, what was going on with the blues end of things, which I'm doing more now. And some of those guys are pretty smooth.
Yeah.
And you get a lot
Yeah,
of
in a
ideas
different way, in a more simplified way. But the degree of difficulty with those guys is remaining consistent with that groove and
the
not
difficulty is
wavering off of it.
Yeah, keeping it more in a steady pocket.
Exactly.
Plus, Stevie Ray's is more contemporary.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you really brought it out.
Which that's what we're all into. I mean, I don't consider myself a traditional blues guitarist by any means, as much as I respect all of those people.
Right.
But, I've listened and studied a lot of styles so that they all come out no matter what I'm playing. There's always some kind of jazz influence in there. There's always the speed rock style coming out somewhere in there. And you've been on you could talk about the things you've done for like 2 hours on your own show as far as road experience. Why don't you just give us a brief rundown of some of the stuff you did when you were in Buffalo and then when you went up to Canada and stuff? And
Basically on the road with several different type units, variety of music, show bands, blues, rock. We did 50s rock and roll shows and some rhythm and blues. It was fun. It was a great experience. I guess I probably couldn't pick one set of music that I loved, but all of it influenced me. I like the rhythm and blues and the blues and some jazz. But I was
you did
influenced by it all.
extensive road work, not like just these little short trips like
No.
we did. Louise and I actually met through the Phoenix, if you can believe this. I was auditioning singers, and she had come off the road
Was
and
not the
answered an
personal
ad.
columns.
Answered an ad in the
Was
paper
not the
and
personal ads.
auditioned her, and it was in the gig
was in the
section
gig
of the Phoenix.
section.
It wasn't personal ads, no. And I answered an ad, and we auditioned her, and we were a trio at the time, and one thing led to another. We were great pals and worked together for about a year and a half, and wound up dating and getting married.
Here we are.
No, my wife is my partner in my business too. But it's great. We have a good time. All right, cool. Let's move on to the next song. This is another Gary Moore tune. If you haven't realized that yet, you will by the end of the show. We like Gary Moore a lot. And this one's a real nice ballad called Story of the Blues. Okay, that was Story of the Blues. That was the Gary Moore tune. Nice ballad. I particularly like that tune a lot because I get to stretch. That's one of the ones that really features a lot of guitar. That guy like solos for hours, so I can justify doing the same thing when we're playing tunes. And it's a lot of fun to improvise over his changes. He's very creative, and
yeah, I like his changes.
His band also like really fits our instrumentation real well.
I love it. I think it's a very emotional. It's a very emotional song.
Yeah.
I get a lot of feedback on it. People think that they really feel the emotion from it. So I enjoy
as a
it.
drummer, I'm sorry, were you finished?
Nope, I'm finished.
As a drummer, what do you prefer? Do you like banging out the ballads, or do you like the uptunes better, or is it like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other?
It varies. It depends on the actual tune. A lot of times, I like playing the ballads because people tend to get into those, especially like if you're playing in a club or stuff like that. A lot of people, especially the couples, I like to get up and dance and stuff. But those are a lot of fun to play, even though there might not be a lot going on as far as playing wise, but there is a lot going on.
Yeah. Tony, what's your pet peeve musically? And by that I mean, with me, to learn like instrumental parts, I'm talking about personally, when like as far as your practice habits and working on tunes, like for us, getting tunes ready to come into rehearsal. For me, I can like sit down, hear a tune fairly quickly, get my guitar parts down, write out a quick chart, and by the time the chart's finished, I pretty much got my musical parts memorized. I have to pin up words on my mic stands for months. I can't memorize lyrics to save my life. It's always my insecurity when I'm performing, remembering lyrics. I'll be halfway through a tune and I end up making up some word that probably totally makes no sense in the statement, but it rhymed and fit the phrase, the length that I needed. Well, what about you? What's the tough thing for you that as far as when you're getting ready to put a tune together come to practice, what's the thing you're going, not this again?
That's a hard call. A lot of the stuff that's current, that's out now, stuff that we do, basic 1-4-5 turnarounds, real simple stuff. Once you start getting into some of the Gary Moore type stuff, Robin Ford type stuff, when you start getting more into the jazz, blues, fusion
you're talking
stuff,
intricate changes.
You get a lot of intricate changes.
Voicings.
And you can lose yourself. I mean, especially like on a day when we were playing down the waterfront, when it gets real hot. As a keyboard player, I know it's the same with a guitar, but you stick. You're playing with plastic, and your fingers have to try and roll and slide, and they get caught. When you're dealing with a lot of intricate changes, you can't move as quickly as you want to.
With me on guitar, my fingers start sliding over the tops of the strings if my hands are sweaty. What about you? What's your pet peeve coming into practice? Just getting up and coming in? Or?
Waking up sometimes.
Well, coming into practice?
But just about basically like if you're working on a tune, some things obviously go smoother than others, some things you can pick up easier than others. We're kind of like letting our guard down here. Mine is vocals, his is basically working with more intricate changes. You're always pretty good. You usually got your changes down and stuff, but what do you...
Trying to sing and play at the
same time. Yeah, I've been doing that for so long, I forgot about that. Every once in a while, I get tripped up.
I don't do that.
Like Couldn't Stand the Weather. We're trying to put that one together. I can't for the life of me get the vocal and the guitar comp going at the same time. Basically, because I feel one thing is suffering. They're both suffering. If I could do one or the other without dealing with one of them, I could do them both, what I would feel much stronger than what I'm trying to do together. I usually find a happy medium with most songs, but there's always that one or two every once in a while that nails you.
There's always a couple songs you can't sing and play.
Yeah. No, she's great with lyrics. I'll give her a tape an hour before we'll come into practice, and she writes the words down and comes and sings, and halfway through the song she puts the paper down, and I'm like looking at it going,
But my only pet peeve is half the time you can't understand what in the heck they're saying on the tape. It's like, hello. They did it on purpose, so we could not get those words. I know it.
Now what about you? Now you seem to... my view is you seem to do real well with memorizing the arrangements, knowing where the pops are and fills and cues.
I had to work an awful lot on that. I had to spend a lot of time practicing with other bands I had played with to work on setting up the changes from, verse to chorus, bridges, specific pops that are happening in the tune. And I had worked a lot, especially through high school and while I was at Berkeley, but with a lot of big bands, jazz bands, the high school jazz bands, stuff like that. So you spend a lot of time reading charts, and you get to hear a lot of the intricate parts for the leading to the different sections.
Right. Did you find a weird transition coming from a reading gig to a gig where basically you're dealing with memorization and using your ears? Because I know I did, because I've done a lot of reading gigs over the years too.
Not too much, because when I started playing for the first couple of years that I played drums, that's all I did was listen to other drummers, and I picked things up.
I think that's basically how we've all started with instruments. But I noticed I did a stint for 4 or 5 years where all I did was read, and a lot of times I was in a tuxedo in a pit. and they just had to sing us up on stage. And
I had my
you can
share of
get
that,
tied
too.
into that after a while because there is a different type of pressure and demand on you on a reading gig. It's
Yeah.
real strict. There's no room for stretching it, especially if the arranger's standing around anywhere within hearing distance. Because if you go off, a lot of that music is set up to, setting up cues. If you decide to improvise something, you could foul up the whole.
Yeah, that I did a lot of shows during the time I was at Berkeley and through the last couple years I was in high school. And setting up the scene changes for musicals. You're always playing, and you have to be on the ball as far as catching the cues and reading the charts and stuff. So you learn from that too.
Yep, definitely. So, real quick story of how we actually met. Louise and I have been working together off and on for almost 10 years. We've had trios, we've had duos. We still have a duo called Midnight Express, and that's how we started working. And we were in a club. I was in a club one night at these open mic blues jams, and I ran into this guy. I said, hey, I'll get up there and do a couple of tunes. And then I think I met you through the store.
Yeah.
And I met you through John Vario, actually. He gave me a number.
But you had known Donnie.
Donnie and I grew up
we went
together.
way
I mean,
back.
we've known each other, but we were always into something else or traveling one place and another. So we never got to actually play. But I mean, we actually, after not really seeing each other and hanging out for a lot of years, which we never really did. We just knew each other casually.
Yeah.
We actually, our musical meeting was that night. That Sunday night, we were having a few beers and we jammed, and it fell together. And that's basically how the first Summer Blast gig we did when we opened for Livingston Taylor came about, because he had a connection that was looking for a band as an opening act, and he said, you think we can do it? And we said, sure. So we put together an hour's worth of music and went out. Our first gig was in front of 25,000 people, which was, and
fun.
it seemed like I was kind of nervous about going up there because that was definitely the biggest crowd I've ever played for. I've done some 2,000 and some 1,500 venues and maybe even 3,000, but never anything when you look out and all you can see for a quarter of a mile is like heads, and but I found it easier than playing to 200 people in a club.
Yeah, it becomes less.
It's less personal.
Intimate.
Yes.
Exactly.
And if only half of them are into it, it still sounds like this thundering roar after every song.
You don't realize
so you get the pump a
volume.
lot easier.
A volume of people. When you have I thought maybe there were a couple of thousand people, but there were, what did the paper say, 15,000?
No, they said 20 to
20,000?
25,000. Yeah.
And
Seriously.
it doesn't, to visualize it, it doesn't look like that many people
Yeah, it's a
fit
wide
into
open
that
space, so it,
Well, you figure
Wow.
you could
The
probably
club.
fit 10,000 just on Coles Hill, and there wasn't a blade of grass in sight during that show.
Right.
right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
cool. How about you? What's easier for you? Small clubs, studio work? Because I know you've done some studio work. So have I. Out of us guys, we've probably done more of the studio work, and Louise has done some. But what's easier for you? Small clubs, the big venues, or doing studio work?
Well, as far as the clubs and the bigger places, a lot of times I can't see the crowd anyway,
Right.
which I like.
Yeah.
The studio work I like a lot because if you play something you weren't real happy with, you can go
Yeah,
back
you
and
do it
change
again.
it. But I
But
like
then
that.
there's always that little ego inside you that I want to be first take Joe.
Yeah, but that-
I always have that, put myself under that kind of pressure. I'm going to nail this in one take so I don't have to rewind,
There's always, even if it wasn't you, there's usually something in there that they want to change.
Yeah, because there's a lot of times you're not playing for you, you're playing for someone that's hiring you to play. And what you pulled off, you might have thought was one of your greatest achievements, but it wasn't what that person was looking for.
And sometimes they'll do what they call a simultake, where you're playing with, say, the rest of the rhythm section, and you could have pulled it off perfect, but maybe a guitar player, hit a wrong note, or there was an extra sound in there that shouldn't have been.
Or
You
somebody
gotta go
else
back and
dropped
do
a
it again.
beat that you're trying to cover up while you're laying your tracks
Yeah.
down. Because the drummer always gets blamed for the time.
Always. Wrong or right.
Okay, great. Let's go to the next clip here and see what we got.
It's called Pay in the Past to Be the Last. You act like you don't want to listen.
Okay, we're back. So that was Lenny we were listening to. How did I sound playing that guitar?
See what happens? I get up to go to the bathroom. I come back. You see who really wears the pants in the family over here. Yeah, that's one of my favorite pieces to do, and we usually get a pretty good response out of that too. Louise doesn't get a chance to do anything during that one. Except
I do
for,
a
like,
sound check.
She
and
does
you
sound
do?
check, goes to the bar, gets a cocktail, gabs a little bit, and she has a blast because we like to
I
play
socialize.
a long version of that, so she gets an extra break when we're doing
But
that one.
you guys do get a lot of feedback on that song. You get
Yeah.
requests for it often.
Yep.
That song, I remember when we were playing that, I was nervous going into that because the mix on stage, I couldn't hear you at
Yeah,
all.
and we definitely, all of us play off of each other
Yeah.
on that song because it is so improvised. Once in the melody, we're talking like 24 bars into the song, and it's like
It's true.
it's all off the cuff. Even not on the bigger stage venues, just, you're at a certain level, you're standing in front of your own amp, blowing your own head off after,
Right.
especially in an outdoor thing like this.
Right.
And it's like, well, hopefully we're all together, A lot of eye contact a lot of times, and I think, we've been together, it was a year in
June.
Yeah.
Actually, end of May,
May.
we started actually
Right.
getting it together. We played for the first time out in public in June. So we're like going on a year and a half, and it's coming along. We still got some work to do, but I'm happy with it. I think
Always got
the greatest thing about this band is we're like a family. We can rag each other, and boy, do we crack on each other big time. We're always pulling stunts on each other and jokes. But I mean, there isn't one person sitting here that wouldn't die for the next person. I don't think. That's a very extreme situation. But I mean, there's a lot of love and brotherhood and sisterhood, and just like a
Brotherhood's
family.
fine.
Brotherhood,
I'll take
with
that.
this band, we're all real close. The chemistry on
Hey,
stage.
brother.
I've been in literally between 50 and 100 bands in the last 20 years, either through freelance session work, bands I've put together, bands I was sideman in, and I have a lot of bands that I love the guys I work with and had that brotherhood, but this is one of the closest bands I've ever been with where everyone gets along. There's usually, when you're getting 4, 5, 6 pieces, I've worked in 14-piece bands where you used to have to sit 2 of them on the other side of the room or they'd be killing each other,
Yeah.
But no one in this band has a problem with each other. We get along great, don't we, Chad? But no, we do. We're real close, and anyone needs anything, the guy's right there for you. Everybody goes. It's a two-way street here, and that's one of the things I love most about this band. Once again, you've been watching the Guitar Clinic, and my name is Jimmy Carrera. Tonight's subject, we had the band on, our band. We're called Carrera. We have Mark on bass once again, Donnie on keyboards, Louise on vocals, and Chad on drums. My name is Jimmy, and we hope you enjoyed the show. We're going to be playing locally in the near future. There's a box number, usually at the end of the show here in the credits, where you can write in if you'd like to get on our mailing list, or also if you have any questions about the show. Normally we do a clinic type of thing where there's studying guitar and music in general. If you have questions or subjects you'd like covered, please write in, and if you'd like to get on our mailing list. Otherwise, you can check the local newspapers and radio stations for where we're playing, because we do play the area quite a bit. We host a blues jam locally.
Tuesday night.
Every Tuesday night. I can't say where it is. We got to be good people
Look in the
about that. We
papers.
can't
It is in
advertise.
Plymouth.
But just keep your eyes open for Carrera. We like to have a lot of fun, and we hope you come down and see us. And thank you for joining in, and we'll see you real soon.
Good, how you doing?
Good. I guess the most important question and foremost we'll be asking is, how long have you been playing guitar?
I've been at it almost 30 years. I started when I was about 10, between 10 and 11.
Early start.
Early start, yeah.
That's why you've become so good at what you do. How and why did you get started playing?
I grew up in kind of a musical family. Neither of my parents played, neither of them did, but my uncles all did, and my dad was really into music, so it was always being played around the house.
Yeah.
And like any kid in the mid-'60s, in my age group anyways, I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, you know, and decided, I want a guitar, you know, and saw the women screaming for the guy playing the guitar, and said, that looks like it'd be cool. So that was during the early days, that's what got me wanting to at least try it anyways.
You got that guitar for Christmas, and
yeah, well, actually, I wanted it for Christmas. I ended up getting it for my birthday the following May, and got started like that.
Great. What kind of studying did you do? What kind of schooling?
Early on, when I first got the guitar that my parents bought me, it came with this deal where you got like 10 free lessons with it from a local guy at a music store, and that's how I got started. And then let the lesson part of it go and just kind of went on my own. I was kind of natural from the early times, from very beginning stages, and was able to pick things up off of records and mimic people that I like. So a lot of self-studies and teachers later on after high school. I kind of gave it up for a while through high school. You get into sports, you get your first car. And on my senior year in high school, I got serious and started studying with a few local teachers, and then got hooked up with this guy, Paul Shumsky from New England Conservatory. He had just graduated from there, and he gave me all my jazz backgrounds. I stayed with him for about a year and a half.
Yeah. What kind of goals did you have early on?
Well, I think every kid that buys a guitar has a dream of being the star that you admired for wanting to be that. But my serious goals were just to be good at it and maybe someday be able to make a living at it. I think my goals were pretty simple.
And you've been able to do that, but I mean, how did you get started? What was your first gig like?
Well, the first bands were like playing with a few guys in high school and then doing like a school dance type of thing and parties and things like that. But I got hooked up with a couple of local bands that were struggling, and in the midst of all this, I met these guys from Duxbury, and I was in a store trying out a guitar, and they said, hey, why don't you come up and play with us type of thing. And I ended up in a band called Weathership, and it was like a 60s band that did a lot of Beatles and Beach Boys, and we got a house gig at For Pete's Sakes, which is now the Charlie House, and we used to do Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So I was like 18, drinking age was 18 back then, and that's my first real professional jobs, was there 3 nights a week.
What about the studio? When did that come in?
Studio work and stuff came in much later, and many bands later. I started getting into a lot of different styles, and I was one of these guys that never stuck with one type of music, so tried a lot of different things, and that gave me the ability to go in and do projects with other people. And started out doing small private studios, getting paid a few bucks to go lay guitar tracks down, and one thing led to another. And I had a few prestigious gigs in big studios in New York that never did anything, unfortunately, record-wise, but it was a good experience. And so that type of thing. And the same now. It's a small part of what I do, but every once in a while I'll land a few studio jobs to go in, make some extra bucks, and the experience of the equipment and being in a pressure situation like that, it's totally different than performance.
Right.
It's much more strict.
Do you do mostly freelance now?
Not as much now. Probably all during the early 80s up to the mid 80s. I played with probably 4 or 5 different bands and didn't really belong to any of them. Russell Raposo, who was a local agent and performer, a great keyboard player, and wound up becoming a good friend, really helped me out in the business and basically laid down the foundation and groundwork for me to become my own band leader and really get into business and get my circles. But that started out freelancing with him and turned into steady jobs, and I played in quite a few bands with him over the years. Still fill in once in a great while if you need somebody.
Now, you've been in all these different bands and all different, I'm assuming there have been all different styles of music that you've gone through. Yeah, many different
styles.
What kind of styles have you gone from beginning to present?
Well, from beginning was probably like the 60s rock, because that's what I came out of, and your peers are into that, and that's what you grow up with. So I started out with that. When I got out of school and got serious and really got into the studying end of it, I got into the fusion and jazz and the avant-garde stuff, and that kind of carried over for almost a decade for me. But at the same time, I was freelancing with wedding bands, so you have to do polkas and waltzes and real book standards and jazz standards. And a lot of the schooling I got after I stopped studying was with Russell, because he was a great jazz pianist, and that band covered everything. So if you wanted to be able to handle and hang on to the job, you had to go home and do your homework and learn a lot of different styles for different age groups.
Any performances that stick out in your mind as being great?
Probably, some of the first club stuff is really exciting. Oh, I made it type of thing in your head. And I think if you stick with it long enough, you realize that that's what it is and everything. But probably one of the greatest performances for me was about 3 years ago. We opened for Livingston Taylor down on the waterfront with a brand new band that I had met in a blues club at a jam session. And the keyboard player, Donnie Matinzi, worked for the state and had a chance to get a band up to do a set to open for Livingston. And we said, okay, let's put an hour's worth of music together and do it. And that stands out in my mind because we played to 25,000 people, which was probably the biggest crowd I ever played for. They really loved us, and we had the lighters at the end of the show and everything. And the big thing for me was that was the last performance that my dad saw me do before he passed away. So that's a real special one.
Oh, I'm sure it is. Who have been your influences from the beginning till
many
now? Again?
influences come in a lot of different ways. My dad was a big one because he was into a lot of things, and I was the type of kid, we were close. I always tried to make him proud of me. So the jazz stuff I started listening to because of him. But as far as players go over the years, we could be here for 2 hours. Some that really stick out in my mind. Robin Ford is one of my favorites. He's an LA studio musician that played with a lot of different people, and now he's on doing his own solo career thing. And right now is probably one of my favorites. George Benson, Larry Carlton, Lee Ritenour, Hendrix, Clapton, Page, Beck from the early times on, Beatles, Beach Boys. So the list goes on and on. There's many great players. I can't even begin to name them all. It'd take forever. But those were definitely some of the main influences. Mark Farner from Grand Funk in my early days for rock and roll. Eddie Van Halen for the newer rock stuff that came out in the late 70s with all the tap, and he was very innovative.
Covers quite a spectrum.
Yeah,
of
it's just
styles
I'm into a lot of things. My thing is if something is done well, whether it's my favorite bag or not, I'll take the time to listen to it, try to learn a little something about it.
Yeah. Do you play any other instruments?
Yeah, I play some keyboards. For probably like the past 5 or 6 years, I've gotten into keyboards. I've been playing bass for probably 10, 12 years, very closely related to guitar, just a different approach and a different job, but technically spelling things out and everything is very similar. And I fooled with drums for a few years, but for the most part I do drum programming in the studio on the pads and the triggers and the drum machines. So.
When you first started playing and you had that first 10 free lessons with your first guitar, did you ever one day think that you'd be teaching?
No, never.
Well, how did that come about?
It's kind of a funny story. I was hanging out at this music store. It was called Carly Music at the time, which is now Plymouth Music. And I was taking lessons down there from a guy. And him and the owner had a blowout one Saturday morning. Just before my lesson, I'm in the store waiting to have my lesson. The guy walked out on him, left him with an afternoon full of students. And he says, Jimmy, he goes, we're going to lose all these kids. He goes, you're one of his advanced students. Why don't you take the lessons for the day? I said, Scott, I'm just, I'm trying to learn here too.
Right.
He goes, most of these kids are starting out. Just go do it. He goes, I'll pay you for the day cash, and and if you don't want to do it after that, that'll be it. But just do me this favor. And the guy was good to me, so I did it, and I really liked it. I got out the basic books that I had been through and took the kids through it, and was really nervous, but got along with the kids, and that was it. I taught from that day on.
So you were still learning as you were teaching?
Yeah, I still am
essentially.
today. I think a good player with a good attitude is a student for the rest of your life. I learn things from the kids I teach. Everyone has a different approach and analyzes something differently. If you're open-minded enough, you can learn from anybody, and you always can learn. It's when you stop thinking you know it all, you start thinking you know it all, that's when you're all done. You can always learn something, and it can always make something better.
That's a great attitude. How did Guitar Clinic come to be?
The same blues band that did that concert down on the waterfront for Livingston got a job doing a blues night up in Halifax here at All Seasons. And these guys are right across the street, and the drummer in that band at the time was John Gazdia. Hot ticket, great guy, and he works here. He's a technician, a cable road guy for Heron. And so he told the guys up here about it and was all excited. So they brought a camera crew down. We got permission from the owners, and they filmed it. And they wanted to air it, and I had met Al that night. I said, well, I'd like to come down and do some of the mixing on this because I've got experience in it, and I want it to sound good. So we did that, and one thing led to another. Him and I are talking while we're up here mixing one night, and he says, geez, there's other things that I'd like to do with you. What can we do? And I said, I like these instructional video things. I'd like to shoot a few half-hour segments teaching.
Yeah.
So that's how it started. One thing led to another, and we got some positive comments back on it, and some of the people in the studio were very supportive and friendly, and one thing led to another, and we're still doing it 2 years later.
Well, you've just celebrated your 50th show, anniversary.
It was a great time.
Why do you continue to do the guitar clinics? I mean, haven't you covered all the steps, or do you?
Well, you never cover all the steps. The reason I continue doing the clinic is, number one, anyone involved with the studio, as you know, you're involved in it and everything, it becomes like a family or a little clique, and you have fun with it. I've gotten great response, and
advertisement that you can't buy as far as exposure to the public and a lot of good
Right.
feedback, and it's just become a good thing. And the other thing is it's my little way of giving something back to kids that can't afford lessons or can't get to lessons one way or another. Not trying to sell them holier than thou, but give something back once in a while.
Sure.
So it just turned out to be a real nice thing, and I enjoy doing it.
Great. How did the Blues Jam get started? How'd you get involved with that?
From basically hanging out at different blues jams and having fun playing at them, I got approached. My duo was playing at Starbucks, and the management there, I pulled out a few blues tunes, and they approached me about putting one together. So I said, yeah, I'll give it a try. Called up some friends and got a 5-piece band together. We learned an hour's worth of music and then started advertising, doing the jams. And then the one I'm doing now is with Dorsey down at Handlebars, who I've pretty much been involved with almost every band I've had has worked for him. We have a great relationship. He's a great guy to work for and to work with. And when he was ready to make a change, he had approached me about taking over the jam, and I said, sure. And that'll be 2 years in July that I've been doing
It's
that
just
one.
gone from there.
Yeah, it's in the musicians that come down to fun. There's a lot of things that keep you doing things. I've met a lot of great people in the circles and great players, and you learn as much as you give in this type of business if you just keep your eyes and ears open a little bit and keep an open mind.
So what's going on now? What do you have
A
coming
lot.
up?
I'm still doing the blues jam, still doing the guitar clinic. My wife Louise and I, who's been very supportive and helped me a lot in this too. I was going through a lot of rough times when we met, and she's a great partner in life and in the business. We're doing the duo Midnight Express. I have a friend of mine, Joe Silva, who's got a few albums out in Portugal, who lives over here, and I've been here about 20 years, and we're in the process of putting a CD together of original samba, Latin-style jazz pieces, both vocal arrangements and instrumental, and we're going to put a CD together and then hopefully maybe go over to a few of the countries and play and perform. We're working on that now. And I just got approached by a drummer friend of mine, Des O'Brien in Carver, to do a trio thing and host a Sunday night thing at his place. So we're going to try that a little bit. So
you
keep
keep
him
busy.
Yeah, and I'm doing some writing and recording of my own stuff too, whenever I get an extra minute or two here and there.
Do you have any advice for upcoming artists?
Yeah,
musicians?
basically, you take it for what it's worth. I think anyone that picks up an instrument and is going to perform or any type of art form where you're performing to people and dealing with the public, you got to have a little bit of ham and a little bit of ego to get up in front of people and do that anyways. My advice would be to keep that in control and study and be open-minded and get into it for fun. Don't being star-stricken and having pipe dreams is good, but I always went for the more down-to-earth thing, and you got to be involved in this and stay with it because you love it, because there's a lot of ups and downs, and both financially, I've gone through physical problems with my hands where I've had to stop playing. I've had surgery on my shoulders and stuff that takes you away from it, and there's always those things that are upsetting, and there's always that underlying peer pressure with other players and stuff too, but take it with a grain of salt, do it because you love it, and judge your improvement and let your ego ride on what you've improved with yourself. You shouldn't be comparing yourself to other people constantly, and do what you feel is right. Don't be headstrong about it, but just be in it because you love it and just do your best at it, and time will tell. Seasoning comes with time and all types of things, attitude as well as ability and talent. So my thing would be get into it, do your best at it, be honest with it, and put the hard work in. It doesn't come easy. You see people playing live or on MTV, then they start working on it and taking lessons, and they realize they've opened up a whole totally different can of worms than they expected. So just basically know what you're getting into and do it because you like doing it, and just be honest with it.
So after all these years, do you think you've accomplished what you had started out to accomplish?
I've made some accomplishments that I'm very proud of. I feel that I'm a local success in the fact that I can make a living doing something that I love. And I feel I've given something back. I feel I'm real good with my students and honest and do my best to help them come along and be patient and understanding. But I haven't achieved all my goals. If I did, there would be nothing left to do. So there's always goals. I feel I can get better. I see my weaknesses all the time. The show has been great for me because it's allowed me to watch myself as a teacher and as a performer, and noticing and realizing my weaknesses and where I need to, and my strengths both that I didn't realize I may have had in either case, and just try to work on both of them. But I've gotten a lot of good things out of it as far as meeting people and just keeping your attitude in check with your music and just with your personality and being your person in itself.
I've gotten a lot out of it, and I have no regrets, good and bad.
Well, thanks a lot for talking with us.
Oh, thanks for having me. Hey, and I'm back. Well, I hope you enjoyed it. We had a lot of fun putting this together, and over the years, I think I learned as much as I taught throughout these shows. I want to give some thanks out to Al Bujo, my partner. He directed and produced all of this stuff behind the camera and did a lot of work for this, and we became great friends. Elaine Whistle, who had a lot to do with this show too, she was worked for the studios, and Steve Hastings was our cameraman. Kenny Wheeler, Tony Coleman came in and out when they could. They were both involved with different TV stations and stuff, and they were all a big help. We all became one big family and great friends. And of course, my lovely wife, Louise, who I've been playing together in bands with her for 30 years. We've been married 26 now, and we still continue to play and having a great life. And Barry Doubleday, who was very supportive to the show, and me from Music Unlimited. I've been working with Barry for 26 years, I should say, for him. He's the owner of the store. But we not only co-workers, we've become really good friends, and he did a lot for this and supported it, as well as any of the local musicians and stuff. He's been great to the music world in this area. If you ever need anything, make sure you go see him. He'll take good care of you. And last but not least, Denise Costa. She's the one who put this thing all together with me. She's done all the work behind the scenes, all the editing of the shows, and put them to computer, and the DVD masters we made and burned them all, and all the covers and pictures. I couldn't have done this without her, and I thank you so much, Denise. I love you. Great job. Listen, I hope you had fun. I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you around because we're going to do some more things. Have a good one.